Tonight's class is taught by Avery Lewis. To go ahead and skip ahead to that class, check the screen for the time marker at which you can skip ahead to Avery's class. To hear the intro to my channel, a little bit more about my process of teaching, and get connected in different ways, continue listening, and then Avery's class will start right after. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and we look forward to connecting with you. Hi, my name is Kim, and welcome to my channel. You may have found yourself here when you were looking for yoga, yin yoga, anxiety relief, relaxation, something to do with Brene Brown that'll help your day feel better, or maybe you somehow stumbled here through a picture of a cute animal, or we know each other offline. However you made it here, welcome, and I'm glad that you're here. If you are joining me for a yoga class, go ahead and find yourself somewhere you can lie on the floor for about an hour to an hour and a half. And yes, I genuinely mean just somewhere you can lie on the floor. Yin yoga is a practice that can be done on a yoga mat, but can also just be done lying in the middle of your bedroom floor, your living room floor, or wherever you find yourself. We'll be moving through about a dozen or so different poses that might feel like they are simple at first, but the purpose of yin yoga is to find a way to use our breath and our self willpower to sit in the same position for 3 to 5 or maybe even 7 minutes. And while that sounds simple at first and maybe not like what anything you ever thought yoga could be is, over time, we work to ride the edge and the waves of sensation. We never want to push ourselves to a sense of pain, and so if you ever find yourself in pain, please move in a way that feels better for you. But we want to ride the waves of sensation so that we can use the ability to take a deeper inhale, to take a longer exhale, to sit with things that feel new or uncomfortable. Because off the mat or off the floor or outside of this moment that you find yourself in, there can be a lot of things that are hard to deal with, a lot of things that are hard to sit with, and a lot of things that you are trying to push away or avoid or take a break from. And it's not a problem to take a break. But when we find ourselves unable to take a pause and just be with ourselves for 5 minutes, we maybe need to take more breaks for ourselves. So think of this time, whether you participate in the movement or not, as a time for you to take a break, to take a pause, and just to give back to yourself. You probably spend hours and hours each day giving your time to someone else in the interest of hopefully something you enjoy. But take this time for you to sit, to lie, to be, and to breathe. Thank you, and I'll see you on the mat.
Welcome, everyone. It's sweet to see this space filling up. Yeah, I always like to start, if we can, with like a little bit of a check-in. I know just from like briefly checking in with some people as you were coming in, I think there's a lot of emotion in the room tonight. So yeah, just like if you're feeling a lot of emotion, you're not the only one, I guess. So I'm saying there's a lot of it here. I'm feeling tired tonight. I just finished moving a couple days ago, and so I'm like physically tired. And then I started a new part-time nanny position last week, and I'm going to have 2 5-month-old babies. I'm insane. I've only had one of them so far, and I had her for a full 8 hours today. And yeah, I just it's been a while since I've had a baby. I'm looking at you too, because I know that you do a lot of childcare. You know this, but others in the room have had babies in their lives. And today she was really, she was really good, but she really didn't want to nap. Anytime I laid her down, 5 minutes later, she'd be awake. And so I finally just gave in this afternoon and let her sleep on me for an hour. And at first it was kind of like frustrating. I was like trying to like send the reminder email for this class tonight and like do all this stuff while she's like sleeping on me. And then I was just like, okay, like just freaking stop and like be chill with the baby. And it was really nice to just be chill with the baby for like 45 minutes or an hour. And just, I still feel kind of the imprint of her body on my body, which is a really sweet thing to feel into. So anyway, that's how I'm coming to class tonight, and it feels cool to be with a bunch of adults so you can like understand what I'm saying. You talk back with real words. It's cool. Yeah. Anybody else feel like checking in? How just like how your day is, or if you're needing anything tonight? No pressure, but if you want, it's nice to kind of have the room help hold things. Sometimes I feel like just sharing with you how my day was, I feel a little bit like of relief from the exhaustion that I was carrying as I walked in. So if you're open to it and want to share anything, but if anybody wants to stay after class today, Josh has been super sweet bringing tea for everybody. It's been just kind of a nice way to close out the practice. So you're welcome to hang out after and chat and have some tea. Class tonight, for those of you who are newer to the class, we typically start on our backs and do some sort of like slow rolling around type movement, and then make our way to hands and knees. We do sort of a shorter standing practice, and then we usually have a little bit of a meditation and then come back down to the mat for more restorative practice. So it's pretty gentle class. We move pretty slow. And yeah, I'll try to give a lot of options for us in terms of movement and how we can use props, and always, always, always it's your time. So if you want to move in a way that I'm not instructing, you are more than welcome to do that. If you just want to like lay on your mat and cry, that's also fine. Like use this time however feels good for you. So last week we talked a little bit about what a felt sense is, and sort of this like inner awareness of our bodies. And I was continuing to think about that this week and think about yoga classes or movement classes in general, and how like mechanical the instruction can sometimes be, where it's like left foot here, right foot there, and like put this bone on top of this bone and this muscle moves like that. And I think that's really useful for like orienting to our bodies and feeling maybe like connecting to bodies and our body parts in ways that we maybe haven't before. But what I'm starting to notice, especially as I slow down my practice, and especially as I like try to do something like what you're saying, Whitney, where instead of like throwing yourself into work, if the point of coming to a yoga class is to like feed yourself, then maybe the mechanics need to kind of go out the window, and there's the movement can come more from like this inward felt sense. And that to me is where like the magic of the practice really is. So I was thinking about that this week as I was doing my own practices, and I'm doing a lot of like ancestral work right now. And we talked a little bit about that last class too, especially if we're coming to yoga practice as someone whose ancestry or culture is where yoga was not a part of that tradition. You know, finding ways to sort of unpack our own lineages has been really important. And so I was reflecting on this sense of like a felt sense and not having a mechanical approach to yoga, and also thinking about ancestry and how that plays into my experience of this practice. And I was reminded of this writer, maybe you know of her, her name is Sophie Strand, and she's kind of this like little darling of the internet right now. She has this quote from one of her essays about not needing an ancestor altar. Like you don't need to have an altar for your ancestors because your body is the altar. And like your body is the proof of their existence. And that has really been resonating with me today as I think about my own lineage and as I come to practice movement practices like this. And when I think about honoring the practice of yoga as someone who does not have that practice in my culture, I think that the sort of felt sense that we can bring to yoga when we step outside of the mechanics of it is a way to honor the practice and also honor the body as it is an altar in itself. Is that making any sense? I feel like I'm like rambling a little bit. So anyway, that was sort of a continuation of last week's practice. And if it's landing for you to be in that tonight, or to think about your movements as something that's coming from the inside out rather than instruction in. I mean, I'm going to be verbally instructing the class, but if you could try to just let that instruction like wash over you and just let your body follow sort of absent-mindedly, if you will, like let your body like unfurl with the practice as however it does, and see if you can like hold reverence for your body as the altar that it is. That would be my hope for our practice tonight, that we can kind of move through it in that way, in something that feels more intuitive maybe than what we've practiced in the past. So does that feel okay as a lens to look through our practice tonight? Okay. Well, let's set some props up. I'm going to have us put one of our blocks at each end of the mat. So you can have one at the top and one at the back. And then I'm going to have us come down onto our backs. But I think I'd like us to turn around so that the head is up towards the top of the mat and your feet are towards the back. And then it might feel nice to bring your bolster underneath your spine. So as you're coming to lay down, you can let the bolster kind of line up with your spine. And if a bolster feels like too intense right now, you might try a blanket instead. And then as you're coming to lay down, just kind of check in with how things are feeling along your back body. And you might choose to let your legs extend long in front of you, or you might take the bottoms of your feet to the floor and let the knees kind of tent together. And for these first few moments of practice, I'll invite you just to try to let as much of your attention as possible float down to your back body, so that you feel yourself existing in the back of your head and along your back of your neck and your shoulder blades. And feel yourself alive and existing along the back of your pelvis, glutes, backs of your legs, all the way down to your heels. And it's possible that as your attention is sort of settling down to the bottom of your body pond, that your facial muscles can soften a little bit. There can be a little extra space between the rows of your teeth, and your eyes can soften back into their sockets. And then just notice if you have an impulse here to move or to stay really still. And if you're feeling an impulse to move, one thing you could try is just gently reaching your arms up overhead, like you're making a snow angel against the ground. So see if you can just follow the impulse, and it doesn't have to look like anything special or anything you've ever seen before. And if your impulse instead is to stay still, you can just be in that quiet stillness. I'm going to give us a couple more minutes right here before we bring in any larger movements into practice. And as you're laying here, I'll have you see if you can really inhabit both of your legs, feeling yourself alive all the way down your left leg and all the way down your right leg. And then try to feel yourself living through your pelvis and your abdomen. Through your chest, heart, lungs, shoulders, your arms and your head. If it feels difficult to inhabit or exist in any one of those places or more than one of those places, that's really normal. And we'll come back to that idea a few times throughout the practice tonight. And you can see if maybe that shifts as we continue together. I'm going to have us start to transition here soon, and I'd like for you just to do this as slowly as you need to. You can start to roll onto one side and press your bolster out from underneath of you and come back down onto your back. And then just notice what it feels like to have your spine against the floor. And then I'll have you bring the bottoms of your feet to the floor so your knees point up towards the ceiling. And it'll probably feel good if you heel toe your feet out a little bit wider, so they're about as wide as your mat or maybe a little bit farther apart. And then just slowly let both of your knees fall to one side. And then slowly lift them back up and fall to the other side. It might feel natural to reach your arms up overhead, so there can be some length along your side body as you make this movement. And then it could be interesting just to explore which part of you is initiating the movement. Is it your knees that are initiating the movement? Is it your hip socket? Where does the movement come from? There's not a right answer to that. It's just a curious thing to explore. And so you can keep doing this as long as it feels good. And when you're ready to move on, just reach your feet up towards the ceiling and lengthen through the backs of your legs. And then let this be intuitive too. So it doesn't have to be a really static movement or a static pose. You can kind of knead the air with your feet. You might bend a knee at a time. You might use your arms to help you, wrapping your hands behind the thighs. You may just be pointing and flexing the feet. It could feel good to bend the knees and draw them towards your armpits for like a softer, happy baby. Or maybe it feels good to bring the knees in towards your chest and rock side to side. And then as you're ready, you can bend the knees, draw them towards your chest if they're not there already, and roll over onto your left side. into like a little fetal position. And then I'm going to have you reach your arms out in front of you like you have big alligator arms, so long arms. Yeah. So we're going to take that top arm and just reach it a little bit past the bottom arm so that your chest kind of angles down towards the floor. And then we're going to slowly take the top arm and trace it along the floor overhead. And let that open your body up into a twist. And just move slow, be gentle with your torso. And then we're going to keep that movement happening as you sort of let the trajectory finish. Keep moving that top arm, let it brush across the top thigh and come back to meet the bottom hand. Yeah, exactly. And so just take this at your own pace. You're just kind of feeling into what's available through the chest and the shoulders. You might notice which parts feel really fluid and which parts might feel kind of crunchy or sticky. Every time I do this, I start to get really sleepy. It's like something about this movement that's really like soothing to the nervous system for me. Okay, so let's take this over to the other side as you feel ready, so you can kind of complete this circle that you're on. And then gently and with care, roll over onto your back and then onto your right side. Letting your arms extend long in front of you. And at first, just taking that top hand and sliding it past the bottom hand so that your heart can angle down towards the floor, and just feel the space that you have between your shoulders, between your shoulder blades, the back of your heart. And then as you're ready, you can start to make that big sweeping circular motion, tracing your top arm up and overhead, opening yourself up, and then gently tracing the hand along your thigh as you come back to that first position. And you might just notice if there is more or less or the same space available on this side as you had on the other. You can think of that as just sort of taking stock of what's here right now. And then the next time that you come into that closed position back on your right side, you can just pause there for a moment. And then we're going to use our hands to support us as we roll over onto our bellies. And so as you're coming to your belly, let's just cross the forearms in front of the body and let your forehead rest on top of your arms. And just take a couple of deep breaths here and see if you can feel any movement through your low back as you breathe. With the front body kind of compressed against the floor, there's more movement available to the back body as you inhale. You might see if it's possible to follow your inhales all the way down through the lengths of your legs and into your feet. And let's gently bring the hands underneath the shoulders. And then pressing the tops of your feet into the floor. As you inhale, lift your face, your throat, your heart, come up for a cobra pose. And then slowly exhale and lower your heart, your throat, and your face. And do that 2 more times, inhaling as you rise up, and exhaling as you lower down. Stay connected through your feet. Inhale as you rise up, and exhale as you lower down. Good. And then feel your low belly drawing in towards your low back, and gently press yourself back to a child's pose. So there's lots of ways you might be in this child's pose. You might have your knees together. You might have your knees wide. You may have your arms extended in front of you. And if your arms are extended forward, it might feel good to bring the palms together in a prayer shape. And then maybe bend the elbows and bring that prayer shape behind your head. And it might free up some space under the armpits and through the front of your chest as you breathe in. And let's go ahead and bring those prayer hands back down towards the floor, and then you can start to grip the mat with your hands and draw yourself up to a tabletop. Let's just move through some cat-cow here. Use your intuition with the pacing of this. So whenever you feel ready, you can start to inhale and lift your head, lift your tailbone. Might feel your collarbones widen, maybe your eyes look up. And then as you exhale, you can round your spine, let your tailbone drop, feel your heart reach up through your shoulder blades, head heavy. And then just follow your own rhythm through that. So allowing your breath to guide the flow of movement. And seeing if you can think about allowing the movement to come from inside of you rather than from any instruction that I'm giving. Yeah, I'm seeing some really nice intuitive movement here. There's some like gazing back over one hip at a time. There's some circular movement happening. Some stretching through the wrists. Might feel good to bring the hands around to a different orientation, maybe reaching fingers back towards your knees and the heel of the hand forward. And so just take your time with this movement. I know we're all in kind of different places right now. When you're ready, we're going to press back to a downward facing dog. There is no rush to get there, and I'll know to move forward when we're all sort of synced up there. And then as you're coming into down dog, some of you are making your way there now. You can just let this be pretty fluid too. So it might feel good to pedal out your feet a little bit, or you can let your hips sway side to side, head shake yes and no. Feel the length of you from your pinkies all the way up to your hip creases, and from your sit bones all the way down to your heels. And we're going to find a short flow here. So as we inhale, I'm going to have you come back to a tabletop. And then exhale, child's pose. And then inhale, tabletop. Exhale, downward facing dog. We'll do that a few times. Inhaling, tabletop. Exhale, child's pose. Inhale, tabletop. Exhale, down dog. We'll do it once more. Inhale, tabletop. Exhale, child's pose. Inhale, tabletop. And exhale, down dog. And we'll pause in this down dog, noticing if there's any extra space available. And then I'm going to have us start to walk the hands back towards our feet. So you come to a standing forward fold at the back of your mat. And then let your knees bend pretty generously here so that your whole upper body can hang heavy. It might feel good to just kind of ragdoll hang, or maybe bring hands to your elbows. It might feel good to interlace your fingers and take them to the base of your skull, just releasing the weight of your arms into your head. And then if your hands are clasped in some way, you can let them come back down towards the floor. And then look between your legs and find that block that you placed at the back of your mat. And we're just going to bring that in a little bit closer to us, and then heel toe our feet out so they're about as wide as the mat. Turning our toes out, heels in. And then we're going to bend our knees and come down to sit on that block. So we're in a low squat. Yeah, exactly. Good. So as you're here, it might feel good to keep your fingertips on the floor for balance. Or it might feel good to bring the palms together at your heart, and then you can kind of use your elbows to bring some space between the legs as you press your elbows into the inner thighs. If it feels comfortable, you can close the eyes or just let them be soft, and see if you can drop your attention down into your pelvis and your feet. Feel yourself existing in your back body. You can stay right here if you want to, or it might feel good to bring your left fingertips down towards the floor right by your left toes. And then we're going to inhale and reach the right arm up towards the ceiling in kind of this big, long diagonal line. And then as you exhale, you can come back to those prayer hands, and we'll try the other side, bringing right fingertips to the floor and then inhaling to lift the left arm. And we'll come back to those prayer hands. And then bring your fingertips to the floor in front of you. And we're just going to kind of rock the weight forward so we can bring our hands onto the ground and use hands and feet to press down and bring yourself back to that forward fold. So you can heel toe your feet back towards each other. And then I'm going to have you grab the block with one of your hands and just slowly uncurl up to standing. Bring the block with you. Okay, and then you can just hold the block with both hands. We're going to carry it with us to the front of the mat. And I'm going to have us just walk really slowly, heel to toe, up the length of your mat. And see if you can really articulate through your feet, through your toes. Feel them making contact with the mat beneath you. And when you make it to the top of your mat, then you can set your block back down. We're going to take both blocks this time and bring them to the highest setting that they have right in front of the feet. And then just come to a comfortable standing position. You can let your shoulders come up by your ears and then roll back and down, palms facing forward. Just a little bend in the knees so you have some buoyancy. And we'll move into some standing postures here. So as we inhale, let's press the feet down and then sweep your arms out and up. Really reach through your fingers. And then as you exhale, swan dive forward. Let your arms come out wide. let your fingers come down to those 2 blocks. And then as you inhale, press your hands into the blocks, lift your torso, halfway lift, and then exhale and fold. And then we'll inhale, sweep your arms out and up, come all the way back to stand. And exhale, bring your palms down through center towards your heart. Okay, let's take a couple deep breaths here. Try to feel your breath in your back body, letting your awareness settle backwards. Okay, and let's go ahead and drop the hands by our sides, and we're going to step the right foot back, coming into warrior one. So we'll have our feet like they're kind of on train tracks here. Hips are going to point forward. Here's the mechanical instruction I so want to avoid, but it is helpful sometimes. So we'll let that front knee come over your front ankle. And then if it feels all right, you can inhale and reach your arms up overhead. So if it feels like you can maintain balance, you might try closing your eyes for a moment. And I say that just because I think it helps you to kind of sense what the pose actually feels like from the inside of your body when the eyes are closed. If it doesn't feel like you can maintain balance there, you might just sort of soften your gaze so that you can really try to bring attention inward. And feel that your back heel can root down into the ground, and there's some strength coming from that back leg. The front hip can gently draw back as the back hip draws forward, and that there's length from the tip of your tailbone all the way up your spine. But that length comes, there's not like a rigidity there. There's still some softness through your shoulders and softness through the muscles of your face. Okay, let's bring the palms back together at your heart and then interlace your fingers. And then we're going to flip the palms forward and lengthen through the arms. And then as you inhale, push into your front foot and lengthen that leg as you reach your palms up towards the ceiling. And feel into the length of you from your outer hips all the way up through your wrists, and soften the shoulders down, and see if you can kind of knit together through the low ribs. Yeah. We'll take an inhale here, and as you exhale, twist to the left. Stay connected to your back foot. And then inhale and unwind, come back through center. And we're just going to play with balance a little bit here. So you can release your hands and let the hands come back by your sides. We're just going to start to sort of shift your weight forward. You might like launch into a warrior three if that feels like it's available to you tonight. You might just like play with letting the back foot lift. We're just seeing what's available balance-wise. And we're eventually going to step back to warrior two. So when you feel ready for that, you can let the back foot find the floor again. And this time we're going to open the pelvis out to the side wall and let the arms come out wide. Yeah. So this is probably a pretty familiar shape for many of us. So I'm not going to give very much of that mechanical instruction, and instead I'm going to invite you to try to come into the internal experience of the shape. So you might ask yourself where you feel strong in this shape, where you feel like you have flexibility. And that might be something really subtle, like it might be like, oh, I can feel flexibility side to side through my lungs here. Or, oh, like my jaw's releasing a little bit, or my eyes feel a little bit softer. And then as you inhale, let's reach the top arm up towards the ceiling and let the back arm fall against that back leg. Feel the whole opening along your left side body, and then push into the front foot and lengthen that leg. And we're going to just start to hinge forward into triangle pose. So as you reach forward with that front arm, it might come down to one of your blocks or your shin, and then the other arm will reach up towards the sky. And then just notice what feels strong or flexible or adaptable, where there's space, where there might not be. And then as you're ready, letting that top hand reach up towards the ceiling to bring you up and out of the posture back to warrior two. And then I'm going to have you push into your front foot, lengthen that leg again, and bring both sets of toes to face the side of your mat. So we're coming to a wide-legged stance. Yeah. Okay. And then we'll just bring the heels of the hands to either side of your sacrum. Little bend in your knees. And then as you inhale, reach your chest up. And then exhaling, hinge at your hips and fold forward. Maybe your fingers come down to the floor here. And another opportunity for just some intuitive movement. So it might feel nice to bend one knee at a time and let your hips shift side to side. It could feel good to come into like a wide down dog. So you might walk your hands forward and feel length between your wrists and your hip creases. And then slowly, when you're ready for it, we're going to start to walk the hands back around towards the front of the mat and just let our feet pivot and turn with us. And then take both hands to the inside of your front foot, and we're going to heel toe the front foot out a little bit so it's at the edge of the mat. I'm going to grab my blanket and bring it underneath me so that when I lower my back knee down, there's some padding. Eventually lower down onto the back knee. So you have blocks here. It might feel good to take your hands to blocks, which will give you a little bit more breathing room through the chest. Or if you have quite a bit of flexibility in the hips today, it might feel nice to come down onto your forearms, or perhaps place your forearms against the blocks. And then for some bodies, it could feel good to let the front foot kind of roll onto the outer edge of the foot towards the pinky side. And see if you can soften through the jaw and your throat as you're in this shape. And then if you did kind of open up through that front leg, go ahead and bring the whole bottom of the foot to the floor. And we'll grab the blocks if you don't have them underneath you already, just for a little extra height. And then we're going to heel toe that front foot back between the blocks. And then from here, we'll start to shift the hips back in space and let the front toes peel away from the floor as you lengthen through your front leg. Maybe letting your spine round, perhaps letting your head drop down towards your front knee. And then gently we'll shift back forward, let the front foot come to the ground, and we'll set the blocks aside. Take your hands to the ground and we'll step back to plank pose. And then it's your choice here. If you want to, you can rest back into down dog or child's pose, or it might feel good to flow through a vinyasa if that's part of your practice. We'll take like 5 to 7 breaths so you can have a little bit of time here as a transition before we move into the other side. Okay, if you're not already in down dog, you can take your time tucking your toes under and then reaching your hips up and back. And then as we're ready, we'll start to walk the feet forward, coming to a standing forward fold at the top of your mat. Using your blocks if you would like for a halfway lift as you inhale. And then exhaling to fold. And then we'll push into the feet and slowly uncurl up to standing. And just let your shoulders roll up and back. And using a moment here to take stock. So just noticing if one side of the body feels different than the other. Notice sort of your proprioceptive awareness or your awareness of where your body is in space, where it is in relation to the other people in the room, and to the floor beneath you and the ceiling above you. And then let's go ahead and do that same sequence on the other side. So we'll step the left foot back, coming to warrior one. Bending into the front knee, our hips will be facing relatively forward. And then we'll reach the arms up overhead. And so the first thing we usually notice as we come into a pose is wherever there's the most sensation. I tend to notice my back calf muscle in this pose first. And once I can kind of be with that sensation for a moment, then my awareness can move into other parts of the experience. So let yourself settle in whatever you notice first, and then let that exist as you let your awareness move into perhaps the more subtle, like what it feels like to breathe in this shape, where you feel like there might be strength or space. And then we'll take the palms together at the heart and interlace the fingers. And then as we inhale, flip the palms forward. Exhale and plug your shoulders back into their sockets. Good. And then inhale as you reach your arms up towards the ceiling. And as you're reaching, push into your front foot and straighten that leg. Good. And then from here on an exhale, we'll twist to the right. You might feel your toes gripping the ground here to stabilize you. And then let an inhale bring you back through center. And we're coming to that balance pose next. So it might feel good for some of you to kind of launch into a warrior three if you have that strength and energy tonight, or you might just sort of let the torso lean forward and let the back leg kind of bounce and feel for where it is in space. And we're going to land in our warrior two when you're ready. So you can let the back foot find the floor and gently heel toe it into place as you open your arms out wide. Coming to this pretty familiar shape. Let your body settle into whatever alignment it feels natural settling into. You might experiment with what it's like to close your eyes in this shape and see if you can sense this from the inside out. And then rooting down through your back foot as you inhale, let's reach the top arm up towards the ceiling and let the back arm fall to the back leg. And then from there, push into the front foot and lengthen that leg. And then we'll start to hinge forward as we come to triangle pose. So we'll let the front hand come down to maybe your shin or a block, the other arm up towards the ceiling. Feeling into length wherever it exists here. And then starting to let the front hand reach up towards the ceiling to pull you out of the posture and back to warrior two. And then go ahead and push into the front foot, lengthen that leg, and we'll take both feet to parallel each other. And this time it might feel good to interlace your fingers at the base of your spine. As you inhale, reaching your fist down to lift your heart up. And then hinging at the hips as you fold forward, maybe keeping a little bend in the knees. And perhaps letting the arms hang overhead as you bow. So no one can see your face in this shape right now. You can totally let your expression go. You can let all the muscles of the face soften. Tongue can be relaxed. And then if it feels like it's time, you can lower your hands to the low back and then down to the floor. Maybe finding some shifting side to side if that's calling to you. And then slowly we'll start to walk the hands around towards the front of the mat, letting your feet turn with you. And we'll take the hands to the inside of the front foot as you heel toe the front foot out to the side of your mat. You might bring a blanket underneath you for some extra knee padding as you lower the back knee to the ground. Coming into that runner's lunge shape. So you can set this up in whatever way works for you tonight. You might use blocks under your hands or forearms. It might feel good to roll onto the outer edge of the front foot. Bring your knee open up to the side. Notice what happens to your jaw and your tongue as you release through your hips, and see if you can try to stay attentive to those areas as well, keeping the tongue soft. And then we'll gently bring the whole bottom of the front foot back to the floor if you tilted it. And then let's bring hands to our blocks so that we can start to heel toe that front foot back in between the blocks. And once it's there, then you can push into the front foot, lengthen that leg, let your hips slide back, and maybe the toes of that front foot reach up towards the ceiling. Maybe your spine rounds and your forehead bows. And then we'll gently hinge back forward, carefully placing the blocks aside, taking hands to the ground and stepping back to a plank pose. And then your choice on the transition, if you want to move through a vinyasa, you can, or settle back into a child's pose or a down dog. So we're going to be starting to wind the practice back down towards the ground. If there's anything else that you want to do from a standing position, now's probably a good time to work that in. If you need another vinyasa or other type of more active movement, this is a good time for that. And so when you feel ready, we're going to find a comfortable seated position just for a few moments as we sort of recenter before coming into some restorative shapes. So you can use any of your props that feel supportive to you. Might be a good time to kind of bundle back up if you want to replace socks or sweatshirts. And so as you're finding yourself in a seated position, just take a moment to drop your awareness into your lower half. Feel your legs and your pelvis can be grounded against the floor or the props that support them. And that there can be some ease and length through the upper body. And feel into the edges of your body. So from the tip of your nose all the way back to the skin along your shoulder blades. Into the width of your body from ear to ear, shoulder to shoulder. And the height of your body from where you sit all the way up through the top of your head. And see if you can sense into the space around you. So just noticing that we're in shared space right now and that we're in connection with other humans as we move together. That we're sort of sharing this collective field. And then letting your awareness settle into your back body once more. So feeling the back of your head, the back of your neck, shoulder blades, all the way down across the kidneys, low back, sacrum. And as you're resting in your back body here, you might lean into whatever sense of ancestry or lineage that feels like home to you or that feels like yours. And if you're not sure what that is or where to even begin that contemplation, you can go all the way back to the tiny microorganisms from which we eventually evolved. Just kind of feeling into the depth of existence in that way, all the way back through time. And then see if you can bring your attention into the very center of your body. If you were to take like a cross section of the very middle of you, capturing the lungs and the heart. And as you're bringing attention to the very center of the body, the core of you, you can let yourself rest there in that presence. And feeling yourself in the moment as you press down through the sit bones, up through the top of your head. And that rising up has this sense of dignity and maybe there's a little flicker of well-being that lives there. And then finally letting your attention move into your front body. It likes to hang out there through most of the day. So we're going to intentionally let it rest there now as you inhabit your face, your chest, your belly. And coming into your front body, you might just hold onto whatever visions you have for the future, whether that's your personal future or collective future as a people. And then seeing if you can hold all that at once, so you can feel into the depth of history through present and into future. And that all of that can actually exist in your body as the altar. And before we move forward into any of our restorative practice tonight, just bring one hand to your heart here and one hand to your belly. Feel the weight and warmth of your palms against your body. Just maybe like providing the sense of like containment. Give your own little safe container here within the walls of your skin. And then it might feel good to just kind of keep placing your hands against your body. So maybe against your chest, or letting your hands kind of press down the length of your arms. You might take them to your face, your skull, the head, shoulders, thighs, and just kind of like sealing everything back up. So you invited yourself into some tenderness and openness in the practice tonight, and this can just kind of be a way of somatically and symbolically closing the container, sealing. And then when you feel ready for it, you can just really slowly start to open your eyes and just try to let the light and colors in the room come to you. So you're not searching for them, you're just being open to receiving them. Okay. So we have a little bit of time for a few sort of integrative postures. And I think it will probably feel nice to use our bolster for most of them. I don't have a bolster, so I'm going to model this with my blanket, but I'm going to have us build a little ramp with our blocks in our bolster. So you can take one block at its medium setting and one at its lowest, and then lay your bolster across those. Everybody has different sizes of bolsters, so we might find as we come into this that you decide not to use the blocks. If you want to do that, what you're setting up for, go there, go straight onto your back. That sounds awesome. If you want to try, I have a couple things we can do first, but like that looks amazing and you should do that. You're like, here we go, we're going back. So that is, we're going to head there eventually. So if you want to do that now, that's awesome. I was thinking it might feel nice to kind of twist a little bit on each side first and before we lay back in that way. So if you want to try this twist, you can come onto, maybe try your left side first. And just going to be in kind of like a mermaid-like shape, like you've got your legs sort of like your mermaid tail. And then I'm just going to have you start rotating your torso over that ramp that you created and let your body come to rest down against it. And again, as you're softening into this, you might realize like the height's not working for you and you want to remove some of the blocks, or maybe you need extra height with a blanket. So we'll just spend a couple minutes on each side here. Okay, so gently let's bring the hands under the shoulders and carefully press your torso upright. And just turn your body so that your low back is against that structure that you built. And then we're going to take the bottoms of the feet together, let the knees open wide, and just let your upper body kind of drape over the lower half. Maybe the forehead hangs. Just for a few breaths before we find this on the other side. And connecting through your sit bones, you can start to bring your torso back upright. And then gently make your way onto the other side, your right hip. Carefully angling your torso over that bolster block structure. And as you're ready, lowering on down. And just letting yourself be as held as you can be by the floor, by the props, by the community we're creating in this space. And then you can gently bring your hands back under your shoulders. And carefully guide your torso back upright. And now we'll come to that last posture of practice. You can bring your low back to the short end of your bolster. And as you're ready, let yourself recline onto that structure. Or if there's any other shape that you want to close out your practice in tonight. These last moments of practice are just purely for integration. There's nothing you actually have to do here, but just let yourself receive anything that may have come for you from this practice. You can consciously start to invite a deeper breath. And just notice the gentle movement that accompanies that. You might feel called to start making some small movements through the head, maybe rocking it side to side. Making contact with yourself, perhaps laying a hand across the heart or belly, or just gently brushing the pad of your thumb against your fingertips. If some larger movements feel natural and good to you, you might extend your legs long, you might reach arms overhead. And in whatever way makes sense to you and in your own time, we're going to start to make our way back to that comfortable upright seat. And just letting yourself acclimate again to this orientation, this upright orientation to gravity. And you can bring your palms anywhere that would feel meaningful for you to close out practice tonight, maybe bringing them together at your heart in prayer or just draping them across the front of your body in some way. I extend my deep gratitude and respect to the practice and tradition of yoga from which we drew so many of our practices from tonight. And I'm so grateful to each of you for sharing this space with me and your willingness to be open with each other and share and to hold each other's grief and sadness together. And with that, I'll invite us to take a couple breaths together just to conclude the practice as a group. You can start by exhaling all the way. And take an inhale through your nose. And exhale. And do that one more time. Inhale. And an exhale. Thank you. For anyone that wants to stick around, we have tea to share. Yep. Hmm.